Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. Less than 2 months after the 12-day Israeli campaign against the Islamic Republic of Iran, with the final act being the U.S. bombing of major underground Iranian nuclear facilities, dubbed by the Americans Operation Midnight Hammer, all is not quiet on the Iranian-Israeli front. Threats and counter-threats are frequently exchanged between Tehran and Jerusalem, and while the Ayatollah regime vows to avenge the bitter blows it has suffered, Israel promises to enforce a zero military nuclear project and stifle all ballistic missile production. Could this mean that the relatively short June war was merely one round in a long fight, with more military action soon on the cards? Joining us to dissect this question include Brigadier General in Reserve Relik Shafir, formerly served as an Israel Air Force commander and a fighter pilot, among others. It's great to see you, General.
Thank you.
Also joining us from elsewhere in central Israel is Brigadier General in Reserve Yaron Rosen, who formerly served as the IDF Chief of Cyber Staff, an Israel Air Force commander, as well as a fighter pilot. It's great to see you as well, sir.
Good to be here, Jonathan.
And I'd like to start with asking this question. On the one hand, we hear from the White House President Donald Trump dubbing this war as a 12-day war between Israel and the Islamic Republic, in which the United States, of course, assisted Israel vigorously. But at the same time, we also hear here in Israel the Prime Minister and the various leadership echelons coming out and dubbing this as Operation Rising Lion. Naturally, an operation and a war are two separate things, but is this merely a war that has started and stopped, or are we expected to see now more cycles as the time progresses, and we do see the rhetoric, of course, with an upward trajectory of the aggression in the sentiments of the statements?
I'll try to answer this without using the knowledge, the inside knowledge that I have on the actual activities. Iran at this time is in a dire situation where all its frontline or head chiefs of staff or chiefs of the different elements within the military are no longer there. The Ayatollah is in a dire situation, as there are some reports that he is not in full capacity of his faculties. There are heat waves in Iran that render Tehran to a 12-hour water rations. So I don't think Tehran is at this time anywhere ready to launch any attacks. I'll also add that their defense systems, different types of defensive systems, the S-300, the best known, but also other systems were so unsuccessful that they are at loss as to what they could do to avert any attacks. And the damage to their nuclear facilities, which is not known exactly at this time, but they are known to have started to clean up the entrances to the nuclear sites and other sites where they housed high-speed ballistic missiles that were blocked inside their housing, so to speak, so they were not usable. So they're cleaning up the area, and judging from what I can understand, it's damage control at this time rather than what can we do to continue the war. So at this time, I would say that it's nothing close. And I would add to that they already know that if they restart their nuclear program without reaching an agreement, the B-2s are ready to strike again. And it's not just something in the air, but has actually been delivered once and can be delivered again. So they have to regroup and rethink of where they go from here. My guess is that the Iranians are known for their patience and long-term strategies, will not be seeking war in the near future, meaning the next few years.
General Rosen, I'd like to hear your take on this as well. Is this merely one round in a broader or a sequence that will see multiple cycles of repeated hostilities between Israel and the Islamic Republic?
I think it will. I think we've pulled the U.S. and Israel have pulled Iran's train off the nuclear track, so to speak. But I think the locomotive is still steaming, unless we keep the pressure on, dismantle it, and if we don't do that, it will find somehow another track, just as was just mentioned. I think that we will face another round depending on two major factors: is how fast they recover. And we've seen Iran recover pretty fast from, from war and from other incidents. I think it's a different story now because Russia is very focused on Ukraine, and they won't be so fast in giving them any more air defense assets because it embarrasses actually the Russian manufacturing air defense is not good publicity because they did so badly. But the Iranians are very clever and they will somehow recover. So that's one side, how fast they recover, and the other side is how we are effective in keeping the pressure on. And what we're seeing now in Iran, together with, along with all the hardships that Iranians have to deal with because of the very, very poor infrastructure that the country has, as mentioned, is also some kind of covert action that is going on. Things are still blowing up. So I think we're back into this covert war, under the threshold of war. So when we go back to this overt war with aircrafts and missiles and bombs, it will be only if the covert war cannot achieve the goal of keeping this derailed, keeping the locomotive still and using the time to negotiate, even though it's very hard to negotiate with the Iranians and they will always push back. But those are the two sides of the current situation.
General Shafir, I'd like to hear your take, however, on you mentioned the dire situation in which the Iranians are currently in. Nevertheless, there are separate reports, including people like or former senior practitioners who have still and carry a lot of weight, namely Brigadier General in Reserve Dr. Amnon Sofrin, who highlighted that the Chinese are helping now the Iranians in rehabilitating their military capacity and capabilities, particularly also when we're talking about surface to air capabilities to try and defend themselves. Namely, the Iranians are, of course, considered to be a asset for Beijing when we're speaking about strategic power competition. What can you tell us about that? To what degree does that also carry weight in the calculus, both here in Jerusalem as well as in Washington?
I think the Chinese, who buy a lot of oil from Iran, have an interest, a vested interest in Iran keeping their supplies, especially if you look at the tariff war between them and the United States. And they're vying for positions on who has the upper hand in Southeast Asia. This is I think, a major focus for the United States, the Southeast area even more than the Middle East. So it would make sense that the Chinese are trying to improve the cards they hold by trying to intervene in Iran. However, changing weapon systems um, is a long-term endeavor. The Chinese, I think, have the same type of systems as the Russians do. That is the S-300 or S-400, which are the advanced weapon systems that were dealt a pretty serious blow by the blending of, I would say, electronic countermeasures and standoff weapons that were led by F-35s. I don't want to go into too much detail, but very few, if any, missiles were shot at the Israeli aircraft who were flying at will over Iran, almost to halfway through to their eastern border. So I think the shock and awe is such that even the Chinese will have a difficult time replenishing what was lost, and the people who were manning those positions and their commanders. So yes, maybe the Chinese will step in, but I doubt very much if it will take less than a few years for any changes to be seen. And we also have to keep in mind the Americans were active. They're flying actively in Iraq. So the Iranians have already been dealt a blow by the B-2s, and I don't think they're going to be too aggressive, even if the Chinese do roll in lieu of the Russians.
Absolutely. Well, General Rosen, the Russians have, of course, as General Shafir has mentioned, introduced some of their most sophisticated systems, including radars of the S-400 and the S-300 M systems that had the capacity of or have certain capacities against certain level of systems, Western systems, but it was quite amazing to see the Israeli Air Force really degrade those capabilities without too much difficulty, which indicates not necessarily that they don't have the capacity to harm, but rather the fact that the Israeli Air Force was well prepared and in very close cooperation with the IDF Intelligence Directorate, Mossad, and other agencies of Israel's security establishment. They were very successful in really degrading those systems. Now the Chinese have seen that, and naturally they did introduce some type of munitions into warfare, particularly in the exchange between Pakistan and India just recently. But nonetheless, all the various munitions that have yet to be introduced into various theaters, to include exercises in close proximity with American systems, they decided, quite apparently, not to introduce those into warfare to avoid a scenario in which those systems would be rendered as hollow of any true threat to what Israel possesses, and more seriously, to what the United States possesses in the event of friction between Washington and Beijing. How do you see this limit China's capacity to be involved in joining or supporting materially the Islamic Republic of Iran in its war against the State of Israel?
First of all, it's very important to mention that everything that happened in the Middle East, specifically with Iran, sent shockwaves globally. So it's not by chance that China stepped in. It's testing the water, and that is the sort of proxy war of China trying to set some goals to see how it will operate and gain some operational experience, if you will, before the goal which it set towards 2026 to be ready for Taiwan. So there's something going on here. And that said, that is why this is so important for the US and global national security. Deterrence isn't a speech. it's a continuous campaign that all sides are now waging against each other with words, with actions, with military actions, diplomacy. Lots of things are going on many levels, and munitions and systems and military systems are being tested in battlefields. That's one side of testing and seeing what side is better than the other side. And the last round in Iran from a Western offensive capability proved very effective. And all the air defenses from Iran's side, including the Russian ones and maybe Chinese, I don't know exactly which ones, but this has really contributed to the Western superiority. And the other side is concerned. So it's trying to see how it can really step in and get better for the later on campaign in 2026. So all these things are going on, at one after another, and each one is making a step to see how it works, and then another step. But I think Iran right now, when we look at it, Iran is cornered. And from history, we know that when Iran is cornered, things happen not in Iran. And that is something I think we should look out for and worry about, because when it is cornered, it looks for a fight abroad. It usually does things that are outside of its own context with the IRGC, Quds Force, and whatnot. And it tries to sort of outflank you, both diplomatically and militarily with terror. It's the largest supporter of terror groups globally. So we have to be very much we have to look out for signs that Iran might do something outside of Iran. And that is something I would look out for in the near future.
Well, sivi pacem para bellum, as it's said in Latin. If you want peace, prepare for war. General Shafir, naturally, preparations here in Israel are continuing for such a showdown with the Islamic Republic of Iran. What can you tell us about that, of course, with all of the sensitivity being taken into consideration?
Obviously, Israeli Air Force should not rest on its laurels and count our blessings for not getting any aircraft hit, be it statistics or luck, or maybe overpowering of the Iranian defense systems, and look ahead into round two. That is, be prepared for round two, both on the attack side and on the defensive side. On the defensive side, I think we met with a certain number of missiles, continental ballistic missiles coming in, especially the ones with CBUs. These are small arms dispersed in the area where they hit. And so we would like to improve our ability to shoot down salvos of missiles, but also make sure that we keep the attack side, which is attacking those missile carrying trucks and hitting them before they're ready to launch. That means a loiter and attack capability. I'll just mention that the F-35s can see the actual these trucks, identify them from several hundred kilometers, and can also track when the missiles are shot, either air to surface to air missiles or surface to surface, and relay that information to F-15s and F-16s who are ready to attack these sites. So the attack side, which is something that a lot of Western powers have, is something to improve in the future with different types of weapon systems that we won't discuss on this program. On the defensive side, maybe in the next few years, we might develop missiles that for loitering aircraft can shoot the boost phase of the Iranian surface-to-surface missiles while they're at a sensitive stage of, let's say, the first few dozens of seconds, and try to hit them before they get out of the atmosphere. So these are kinds of systems that are being developed in different areas of the world at this time, and using either manned aircraft or unmanned aircraft, if you have control of the skies, might be able to lower their hit capability. By the way, almost 50% of the Iranian ICBMs, or I wouldn't call them ICBMs, but continental missiles, failed to reach the area where they're being shot. So their manufacturing leaves something to be desired for the Iranians, with a lot of failures. So they have a lot of getting back to the drawing board to do before they launch another attack.
Over 80%, you said?
Oh, 50%. The others were shot, about 88% altogether didn't make it. The rest were shot down by the different elements of the arrow, the Aegis, and the THAAD. And even some were shot at a late stage by the Iron Dome at a low level before they reached the ground.
Thank you, General Shafir. General Rosen, we don't have very much time left, but I'd like to hear your take on this, since the war against Iran, be it one cycle or a couple cycles in the looming future, is merely one major front, albeit of multiple fronts, namely Israel dealing with the various proxies of the Ayatollah regime throughout the region, to include, of course, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen. In your understanding, what is the approach that Israel should take meanwhile before the next cycle against the Islamic Republic?
Yeah, so I think I think we need to take into account that there's actually a wider campaign here that we need to pay attention to. Even though we're talking about Iran, what's the end game? I mean, what started this whole thing was October 7th, and how the whole Middle East exploded was what started in Gaza. And we're coming full circle now, after talking about Iran and the nuclear program and everything. I think that we have achieved something which is very important. We set back the nuclear program. There's no imminent threat coming out of Iran. We might have more rounds, things will happen, both sides will try to get back in shape, and the Chinese are here and the Russians are looking, all these things are happening. But that is sort of the wider picture. But when it comes back to Israel, there's a huge backlash of October 7th that we're dealing now. And that comes back to Gaza, and why Sinwar, he wanted to pull in everyone, and actually in a very weird way, even though everyone, including Hamas and Gaza, have exploded and were blown up to pieces, we're coming back to this endless war in Gaza, which might be the biggest challenge after dismantling the Middle East. What we're seeing now is intense backlash internationally, and this might be how we collapse, we Israel and the US that is trying to support Israel in changing the Middle East and making it a better place. So I think that in the near future, what we have to see in a very fast way, because the backlash is getting worse and worse globally, what we're seeing now, both from the European countries supporting declaration of a Palestinian state, etc. All this backlash needs to be outflanked by the US and Israel quickly by ending the war in a smart way and telling a very different story than we're telling right now, which is trying to tell a story that we just have to go into Nuseirat and El Burej, and then everything will end and they will collapse. We've heard this thing time and again. It's not the right story. The right story is that Israel has turned Gaza into a monument of rubble and death, and that is how we won. And now we have to pull back and negotiate. It will take years for Hamas to come back to its capabilities, so we don't need to tell a different story from that. We have to be much more confident in telling the story that we can end very securely the war in Gaza. That's what we need to focus right now, because everything we're talking about might just come back at us and look as a total failure after we've successfully, with the help of the United States, changed the Middle East for the better.
Indeed. Well, those European countries, Canada included, of course, Australia just recently, are lashing out at Israel due to the domestic issues that the war in Gaza is causing. We do see the scrambling of the Muslim Brotherhood and other Islamist organizations, which are designated as terrorists in the Middle East, ironically, but not in Western civilization. Go figure. These organizations are in an unholy matrimony with a whole group of radical leftist groups trying to impose their will by very dangerous activities in those countries. I do speak with many of those European practitioners, senior practitioners and leaders who are telling me that this is the main trigger for the decision making on the foreign policy of those same countries, which is staggering to me, but nonetheless, this is reality at hand. This is also all the time that we have for today's edition. So I'd like to immediately thank General Relik Shafir and General Yaron Rosen for all of your insights. I deeply appreciate both of you, and I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.